Welcome to the Dynamis podcast this week, guys. I am very excited to bring you a special treat with this week's episode. We have with us two individuals that perfectly align with the Dynamis mantra. Coming straight out of Bigger Pockets lore, we have Cody Davis and Christian Osgood joining me this week. Cody and Christian are very impressive individuals for many more reasons than simply numbers on a resume. For those of you who don't know, the 10,000-foot view of what these guys are about is essentially building a fruitful network to get you where you want to go, leveraging your story as buying power and starting from nothing. I'm constantly watching their social media videos as their net worths continue to climb. The last reel I saw touted a $21 million net worth at 21 years old. Yes, you heard me correctly, 21 years old through seller and creative finance strategies. Now, we're going to talk about way more than their net worths, but I wanted to set the stage for who these young men were. Cody, Christian, welcome to the Dynamis podcast.
Thank you for having us. Super stoked. I love creative finance and love being able to share it with folks. I'd like to clarify though. I have 21 million in real estate with 12.5 million in debt. So there's some debt attached to that. Not 21 million in equity. I will be there, but not today.
That's good clarification. I think it's important for people to understand. So we have a broad spectrum of listeners. We have people who own brokerages and have millions of dollars in net worth in holdings and equities. And we have other people who haven't done their first deal yet. So maybe break that down really quickly since you touched on it, Cody.
21 million-ish. I think it's a little over that today. We just got another appraisal back for an asset I bought for 680 that appraised at $1.4 million. But yeah, 21 million-ish in real estate, 12.5 million-ish in debt. And of course, I partner with Christian on the bulk of it. I've got my first 12-plex that's worth like $1.7 million, $1.8 million of the 21 without Christian. But other than that, we do everything 50-50. So you're also going to have to cut that equity in half.
Give us a flyover. Who are you? What mission are you guys on? What are you trying to accomplish? Give us some quick bullet points, and then we'll get into some really good questions.
Well, for me, I actually went the whole college route, got a job. I worked 7 years in a career, and I always wanted to be in real estate. First real estate book I read was Brandon Turner's book, the book on rental property investing. Genius title, by the way, because I could say he wrote the book on it. But went through that, and I was like, oh my gosh, I can totally do this. So my next step, which was the wrong next step, was I need to get into real estate, and I know how to get a job. So I went and worked at a company called land.com. And 2 weeks in, the CoStar Group bought them. If you don't know them, they own apartments.com, LoopNet, the actual CoStar data platform, but huge multi-billion-dollar real estate company. So I made the mistake of thinking, well, okay, I'm working in real estate, so I'm closer to being an owner of real estate. Fast forward a few years, I learned that the only way to be an investor in real estate is to actually go out and buy real estate. And that's completely different than working in an adjacent field. So end of 2020, everything was shut down. I was an outside sales rep. And when you're not allowed to go outside, especially in the state of Washington, I was like, well, this job is bogus. I'm going to go do what I said I was going to do. And I'm going to go buy real estate. Bought a duplex, met Cody. He told me to buy a duplex across from one of his sixplexes. I did that, and I ran out of money. So from that point, started talking to Cody about, how do I expand more? And he's like, well, I never had any money. I just bought my 30th unit. I was like, I want to get to 30 units by 30 years old. I was just about to turn 29, so I had like 14 months to pull this off. I was at 4 units and out of money. And Cody's like, well, I can't help you there. There's 38 plex I want to buy, and I need a partner to take this one out. That'll put you at 42 units. That's not 30. I was like, you know what? That's the adventure we want to do. And after that, we bought a whole bunch of other real estate. But I think the real story that most people are most interested in hearing is, how did Cody actually get from no money to 30 units by the time we actually partnered?
A rich dad. No, just kidding.
Wait, you had daddy's money this whole time?
I wish. So that's what everybody says online. But no, in reality, I was a college dropout, first person in my family to not pursue the whole college route all the way through. So a little backwards, a lot of the come up stories. Most people say, I was the first person in my family to go to college. Well, I was the first one to not see it through. And I was working at the YMCA, a gymnastics coach, done gymnastics and parkour. And I just applied to a job at Target. I just applied to a job at Safeway. I worked at Safeway for less than an hour. It's like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, and then I quit. And I realized, my mentor was right. I shouldn't have been doing that job. But what happened was I got out of high school and I got my real estate license. Some random person on the internet DM'd me and said I should drop out of college and get my license. So I did what any logical, rational 19-year-old would do. And I dropped out of college and got my real estate license. And my parents were upset, and that's okay because I was going to become rich as an agent. And then I didn't sell anything. And 6 months later, I still made no money. And I was thinking my parents were right. And one of my gymnastics buddies called me up and said, hey, can you help me buy a house? And so I sold him a duplex because I had read Rich Dad Poor Dad. And so I said, you should just buy a duplex instead. So I made $3,600, and it only took 7 months from start to finish to make that much money. I could have made more at Safeway. So here I was thinking I was doing okay because I finally got my first payday. I sold a mobile home right after that and I made 12 grand. And then I want to say another month after the mobile home sale, I bought a 12-plex seller financed. It was on the MLS, and I bought it 0 money down. And that kicked off the career. Fast forward 2 years, bought another 12, bought another 6, hence the 30 units. When I got to 30, there was a duplex that came for sale. There was actually 2 of them. I sold the first one, the better deal, to my buddy Jason. And now we're business partners, Jason and I. Then I sold the second one, which was the crappier property, to Christian. And he flipped it and he made 6 figures, and it was a good day.
How did you guys meet?
We were actually working at the same office. So I knew of Cody, but he worked in a totally different building down the street. So I was doing a different project for the same company that he was a broker for.
Yeah.
And I had become an agent to work on some property management projects for them and a data product coming out of CoStar. They wanted me to try to spearhead a team that ended up being a shipwreck, which is a story for another time.
But we made the call center profitable because we tag teamed all these deals, and outside of one person, we sold more real estate than anybody in that call center.
Yeah, it was. Wow. That part was fun. That part was really fun.
That's where we started to partner.
But we really connected. It was actually at the owner of that company had backed out of Grant Cardone's Growth Con. And we were going for the first time. At least it was my first time going there. And he's like, hey, I got a room, 2 queen beds. If you guys just want to snag it, you and Cody can get a free room down there. I was like, okay, I know kind of who Cody is. And so we had 3 days where we had to bunk together. And that's really the first thing of a partnership is you have to be going the same way, whether it's a friendship, a marriage, a business partnership. You have to be headed the same direction. And we both had this goal of like, what would it take realistically to get to 100 units in 2 years? And then we partnered and did it in 1.
Oh, we did in 11 months. Didn't take a year.
11 months.
And we celebrated with a resort.
Woo!
We bought a seller finance resort to celebrate.
I love that. That's the Robin Hood Resort, right?
Yep.
Man, there is so much to unpack here. So the first deals that you guys are doing as agents, were those coming from the call center? Were you guys kind of getting your feet wet in a call center? No. Okay. So what were you doing at the call center?
For me, the goal was to create a data product. So basically, it's just interview a whole bunch of people who own small multifamily, because that was the focus of that firm. It was duplex, triplex, fourplex, get everything in 30-year fixed rate debt. That was that investment brokerage's model. So for us, it was let's do a huge data dump of all the stuff. The CoStar group goes after 5 units up, and really 25 units up. They're after big commercial buildings. So it's like, what if we had a data product where we just owned the data for all the owners and all the information, unit counts, tenant base, rents for small multifamily? There's no one really dominating that niche. So within that, you talk to all these different owners, and it's a pitch without asking them to sell. And you just pretty much ask them about the property and go, hey, are you looking to expand? I'm going to call 100 other people today. If you're looking to buy anything, maybe we run into a building that's right for you. Just a very passive data sale. Take a note, move on.
So I asked you about the call center. It seems a little bit off the beaten path, but the reason I asked you about it is because you made a comment. You said you didn't want to be there. You wanted to be an investor, and the way to become an investor is start buying real estate. But you walked this path for a short period of time working at the call center, and what the call center was doing, whether you were aware of it or not, was honing your edge. It was like, sharpening your skills. You're making calls. You feel like that time was beneficial in getting the repetition, in reaching out to people and kind of building that muscle memory of what is this like? What is this experience like over and over and over again?
It was worth it, but not for the reason you would think. The actual idea was kind of dumb and unnecessary. It started to make a little bit of money, but it wasn't like a highly profitable venture. And by the time it started making profit, the owner tanked it. What was valuable is we got to learn how not to structure a business. There were some mistakes on how they wanted to scale, how many expenses you add on the way up. So we have a principle like start with profitability. They started with a huge negative and worked their way up to profitability. And by the time they were making money, they had suffered too many losses. and the whole thing fell apart. So it really helped us define our principles by being in a business where the business was built upside down so that we could construct our own the correct way. So I really had like a master class on how not to run a successful org.
Yeah, we watched him spend 300 grand to make 7,000.
Wow.
So when we built our business, that was a similar model, but a little different. We made, I want to say, over $500,000 before we started.
Yeah.
So we started with profitability first, and now we're going in and refining everything.
We've never shared that on a podcast.
Well, sometimes the best examples that you learn from are your worst experiences. So sometimes our worst leaders end up being our best teachers because we learn, hey, we don't want to repeat this example here. I always look for the silver lining. And whenever somebody says, I did something I didn't really want to do, I always look at, well, what path did you walk to get to where you are today? And how did that story make you who you are today? And I always try to squeeze the juice out of that and then apply it to my own life, so I don't have to walk that path. But I think, there's valuable things in there. Now you guys are equipped. You have rules and SOPs and you're forward looking. You can see these things coming on the horizon line, so you don't have to take that loss in your own business. And I think that's incredible. Cody, you said you're the first person in your family to drop out of college. You're kind of doing the story in reverse. So you're 19 years old when you dropped out. Is that right?
Yep, I was 19.
Okay. This is what I want to touch on because you're constantly saying you got to sell your story. You're the first person in your family to drop out of college and go become a realtor because somebody apparently reached out to you cold on the internet. The question that I want to get at is why. There had to be a pretty strong why that put gas in the tank to get you where you wanted to go.
Yeah, I mean, there was a couple things. Number one, that started off when I was in high school, I had a civics class, and my civics teacher was an attorney, and he taught us about torts and all these different things that he had to deal with as an attorney and law, and it was a fun class. It was one of my favorite classes in high school, and we were in the last, I want to say, month or two of school, and I was a senior, and he said, okay, if you come to the last day of school, which nobody did, I'll teach you how to make money when you sleep. And so my thought process was, okay, that sounds nice. And I had read Rich Dad, Poor Dad prior to that because one of my mom's friends gave it to me when I was 14. Read it, got super stoked about buying a duplex. And then I realized I was 14, so I put the book back down. Picked it back up after my civics class, and I showed up. And he said, well, if you buy this $5,000 house like I did in Tacoma, and then you rent it out, then you can get rich over time. And so all my buddies that are no longer really friends, they said, well, you can't buy $5,000 houses. So I was like, okay, well, you can't in Tacoma anymore. And you know that, you're from Tacoma. So I was like, okay, this is cool. Other people, my civics teacher, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, like these resources are saying real estate's a good way to make money. And so when that message came in on Facebook, there was an opportunity. And what that guy that messaged me had said is, look, you don't need any money if everyone else pays for your stuff, in this case, being tenants. And so I left college and I did that, and it ended up working.
So you kind of had this fuse already burning from high school. You had a really impactful teacher really early on in life. 14, you picked up the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which, by the way, is incredible. That's very rare. It's odd for a kid to have an interest in that book at that age. So kudos to you. I think there's nothing wrong with recognizing that you're wired a little differently, and to leverage and take advantage of that is something that you should totally lean into, and you obviously are. So that's a quality about you that's pretty unique and special. You get to high school, you have an influential mentor, the juices are already fermenting, and boom, somebody reaches out to you and you're like, yeah, I've seen it 3 times. I'm going for it. Was there anything beyond that was like a why for taking a risk? Because really you were taking a risk. I'm sure you had faith in yourself and you believed in yourself, but is there anything beyond just, I had a general interest and these things kept coming back up?
Yeah, well, I did the math, and working as a coach, between that, working at Target and working at Safeway, I'd be able to net about $5,000 a month. And the thought process was buy a duplex by 21. So if I netted $5,000 a month because my expenses were low, living with my mom, I could stack enough cash working 3 jobs for a few years to buy a duplex, which wouldn't have sucked. I did a little bit better than that, but that was the thought process. So instead of doing the college route, work really hard at some low pay jobs, stack as much cash as possible, and then throw it down on a duplex and call it a day.
I love how just logical these decisions are for you at that age. I think at 20, 19, 21, I was fighting the GWAT and I was overseas. I couldn't see past my nose. All I could see is deployment cycles and free time. So I just love how logical that is. Have you ever reached out to your high school teacher and thanked him for kind of lighting that fuse?
Yeah, I met up with him for coffee.
Is he just incredibly stoked?
Yeah, he's never had anybody take it as far as I took it. And I haven't met with him since I had 68 apartments.
Wow.
So it's been over a year. I should probably go say hi.
Yeah, go buy that guy a coffee, man. I want to talk about partnerships because you guys mentioned, here you are on this trip. You spend your first 3 days getting to know each other, being roommates, bunking together, sleeping next to each other. Partnerships are one of the most difficult things in business relationships. Partnerships are difficult. They're like marriages, and you have to be aligned and communicating well, and you really have to be willing, both of you, to do the work. There's going to be good days and bad days. And so on the theme of business partnerships, with partnerships being notoriously hard, what's been some of the hardest moments in your guys' partnership, and how do you guys overcome that?
I think one of the hardest moments in the partnerships in closing the Robinhood, one of the conditions, this is just part of the close, is it wasn't hey, this has to remain in place forever, but they wanted someone else to live on site because the Robinhood for 88 years has always had an on-site owner.
Which is just not the optimal way to run it.
Yeah, but it is a suboptimal way to run it for the way that we do business and how we see optimizing revenue. That being said, we did that because Cody was renting an apartment that he wasn't really attached, and his cat brought fleas. So he was like, I'm ready to just leave my apartment and my fleas behind and go on the next adventure. So we got all the stories that we never tell on other podcasts. So Cody fled his fleas and went to the resort. And we had always, through the first year, the reason we were able to go so fast is because we see each other every single day. Like, we work together every day. There's no weekends. We're just working together all the time.
Super productive.
When Cody's down there, I am usually the one running operations, and I also run personnel. Cody has no experience doing that, and Cody is our genius of numbers and building investor relationships. We can both do each other's role, but there are places that we are absolutely best at. We put Cody in the role that I am usually pretty good at, that Cody has no experience in, managing employees, and we had our relationship guy add like 5 to 6 hours of additional driving to get out to anyone who lives anywhere near civilization.
Yeah, it would be 3 hours a day minimum. It wasn't 5, but I mean, it's 3 hours of extra driving to build the relationships, because I didn't stop doing that. So it was just an absolute waste of time, and it pulled away from my ability to actually manage at the resort, because I was always in Renton anyways, or Moses Lake or Tacoma. It was a drag.
Yeah, which had Cody frustrated, and then Cody's not having fun. And it's hard to be optimal and productive and work on the not fun task when you get out of a car, a ton of driving. It's like, Cody, we need you in Excel right now. It's like, no, this is the last thing you want to do. I think that of our partnership, that was the hardest part, is when we did a project and we changed the dynamic of the partnership that dramatically by going, we're not working next to each other anymore. You're going to go down here. You're going to work on the things that you've never done. I'm going to take over things that I've never done. And that was a ton of strain. So we solved that by moving Cody back to Renton. Yes, he lives 2 blocks away now.
Yeah.
And the seller was fine with that? He didn't care?
They don't really get a choice.
Yeah.
But no, we're good. We've beat their numbers month over month.
Nice.
They're fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. They've seen the books. Or, well, I don't show them all the books, the month-end numbers of this is how we did. He didn't think that it would be possible for us to beat any of his months by 20%.
Wow. And the first month he brought that up, we beat it by 26%. So
wow,
we did well.
Good.
The resort's doing really well.
Man, good for you guys. Tell me about the Robinhood Resort. How did you guys come across it? How did you find it? How did you finance it?
Well, it's an hour away from you, so you should go book a stay.
Yeah, let's do it.
No, the Robinhood, that was built in 1934 by John Beckman. John Beckman ended up partnering with Walt Disney for the Robin Hood movie back in the 30s. Hence the Robin Hood Resort being built in the 30s. But a little bit of history there. Super fun cabin getaway with hot tubs. We just bought the property next door to it with It's got a sauna, another hot tub, and waterfront, but super fun, just getaway resort. And all the cabins are a little bit different. We ended up finding that off market. We had a buddy, Dion from YouTube, who sent it to us and said, hey, this is a little too active for me, but zero money down, seller finance, 20 grand a month, cabin resort, and soft market. So he told us that, and that got us excited. Extra $250,000 a year in cash flow for $0 down in PNW.
Free resort. Awesome.
It's free real estate. Well, it ended up being $1 million down.
So same, just has a few extra zeros.
Yeah, a couple extra zeros and a one, no biggie. But we ended up going and meet with the owner, and not only did we find out that it was $1 million down, it was on the MLS, and it had been on the MLS forever. So we do what we do, and we bought it. And we got them to seller finance it. And then the triplex next door to it came for sale, adjacent real estate. So I called them up and asked them to seller finance, and they said yes. So we bought that too.
There's a large group of my listeners who are just getting started. They're listening to all this creative finance talk right now. It's the talk of the town. Everybody, there's all these big names popping up with seller and creative financing, and it can mean a lot of different things. If we could just speak to the audience who doesn't have any faith in themselves or the fact that this is a reality, they're sitting here thinking like, there's no way. How am I going to get anybody to seller finance to me? I would love to just kind of cover the mindset of how do you talk to these sellers? How do you bring up seller finance solutions? What strategies do you think are going to be the most useful in getting deals done in the next 12 to 24 months?
I'll speak to the mindset, then Christian can talk about the strategies.
Okay, go for it.
Christian's a good strategy guy. As far as the mindset goes, it comes down to simplicity. That's it. We simplify everything. And so when it comes to buying real estate, there's only 3 criteria. Number 1, you have to solve for how do you buy it? That's the easy one. The hard one is how do you never lose it? And the last piece is will it be fun? Because if it's not fun, you quit. So you have to have all 3 pieces. And so the how do you buy it, the simplicity of it, and when it comes to creative finance, is you get your deal, the property you want to buy, then you line up the debt, which is the big piece of the money, and then you line up the money down, which can be in the form of equity or cash. You can also borrow the down payment, but it goes deal, debt, equity. And if you can't get 100% debt, then you need a little bit of equity, which could be in the form of your own cash or a partner. How do you never lose it is long-term fixed rate debt that cash flows. If it's not long-term and you have a balloon coming up, you can't guarantee that you're going to be in the right market cycle when you have to refi. So you may be in jeopardy of losing it. If you don't cash flow, you're probably going to lose it. And if it's not fixed rate, just like all the syndicators right now, your rate goes from 3 to 8, you're in jeopardy of losing it. And then will it be fun? That's an easy one. You just have to answer, will this be a fun adventure? And if it's not, probably don't do it. That's the simplicity of the mindset behind this. If you just understand, you just have to figure out, how do I buy it? How do I never lose it? And how do I make it fun? You just have to solve for the deal. You find it if you want to buy it. What debt product works for it? And then how do I get the money down? And if you can solve for the big debt piece, getting the little equity piece is really easy.
And you asked about the strategy of like, how do they find these? How do you get the confidence to do this? So I'm going to start with what you don't do, because what a lot of people online are telling people to do is like, oh, you want creative finance? You want to look for distressed properties, distressed sellers. That is the opposite of what I would do. Reason being is if you're looking for seller financing or any other creative financing that doesn't involve having to play with someone else's existing debt, you're looking for properties that have low to no debt on them. People who are in distress are typically not the people who own their properties free and clear. That is a pretty stress-free way to own your property. If you've mastered the game, you've paid off everything, it is very, very, very hard to lose it. So instead of going after distressed properties and distressed sellers, we go, who has mastered this game? So step 1, decide your goal for yourself. What do you actually want to do? If your goal is to get to $5,000 a month, you're not going to need to build the same portfolio that we built.
Yeah, you get $1 million of equity paying you 6%, you're done. 60 grand a year, 5 grand a month.
Ta-da, you're done. So you buy enough real estate to do that, then you pay it off, and now you own your $5,000 a month. And if that's what you need, congratulations, you've made it. But you're going to set your target, and you're going to see what does it actually take to get there. Roughly how many buildings, how much time, how much cash flow do I need to fund my lifestyle? Okay, awesome. Now, instead of looking for a distressed seller who doesn't have anything to teach you except for how to lose real estate, you're going to go, who in my market that I want to invest in has actually done what I want to do? Pretty simple. You then just meet with those people, and you have to get good at mapping your story. We have an online course and mentorship group on the multifamilystrategy.com where we coach people on how to actually script this out, but on a very simple level. You need to be able to introduce, this is who I am, this is where I'm trying to go. How did you get to where you're at? And you just shift the discussion to them telling their story to you. It's not about buying real estate. It's about building a relationship with someone who's done what you want to do. We have never asked anyone. I mean, maybe Cody did early when he was learning how to be a broker, but as soon as he started really buying stuff, we haven't asked people to sell their buildings to us. We meet people. They know our goals. We know their goals. And when it's time to do a transaction, someone else always brings up, hey, I have a building. I have a friend. You need to take a look at this, like the Robinhood. The deal's wrong for me, but I just looked at this. You need to connect with these people. I think this is the right project for you guys.
And then we bought it.
But that's all you have to do. Like Cody explained the how. It's figure out how to do it. It's creative finance. The price, the term, the interest rate, it's all made up. But the actual how do you ask it, it's not done off of the tax benefits to the seller or selling them on the idea. They want to sell it to you, and you present to them, this is how I see it working. And that it's really that simple. You add any steps to that, you're going to get less deals done.
Yeah, I love how you guys break this down so simply. And I've heard you say many times before that, building relationships and finding mentorship is key. And I've heard you guys even double down and say you are the best people at coaching how to build relationships and mentorships. And, I think what you're saying is so powerful. You're showing up and you're building a community of people. And when you have a community of people, everybody wants to help each other. In my experience is, generally people want to help you. They really do. A lot of people get fired up by pouring into somebody who is ambitious, who wants to work hard, who has a good story. And, if there's somebody out there that's listening and saying, well, why would anybody want to help me? Let's say I show up in these circles. I think a lot of people feel a lot of pressure to just show up and provide value day one. And they feel like, well, maybe I don't have value. I don't have a lot of experience. There's nothing I can offer. You guys know, and I know, people do have value. And I think they're overlooking the value that they're bringing. But what can how do you speak to that, to somebody who thinks they don't have any value when really they do? It's just about getting in these rooms, pushing past your discomfort zone, building these relationships, networking, communicating. What kind of advice could you offer to those people who feel like they don't have any value to add?
Yeah, there's 4 boxes, and there's a little box drill that someone else coined on the internet. It's like, you know what you know, you know what you don't know what you know, which means in theory you're good, but you're not. And then you don't know what you don't know. And so there's these 4 boxes, and most people operate existence in theory because they just don't know what they don't know about all this game, like the real estate monopoly game. It's real. We're working on buying a whole block in downtown right now over in Central Washington. Didn't know I could buy from a housing authority till I did. So when people are getting started, they're expected to do the same thing everyone else is doing, but they have the least amount of money, the least amount of connections, and the least amount of know-how. That sucks. So they don't know what their value is, but what most of the value is in this game when it comes to the relationship-based game and just meeting with people that have played it is that a lot of those people have more money than they have time, and that is just a fact. They have nobody to share it with. Their kids don't want it. They want the money, but they don't want the real estate. And what we've acknowledged in our business is that the story is worth more than the real estate. It always has been, and it always will be. Doesn't matter how big the money figure gets. And most people don't treat it that way. So if someone wants to get started, understand that there are people out there, a lot of people, it is ridiculous, that have more money than they have time and nobody to share the adventure with. Even if they're married, even if they have kids, nobody cares. And so what we did is I made myself present for people that have more money than they have time. And they're still younger. I mean, some of these people are in their 40s, 50s, but they have a lot of money that they could never blow. And so I'm going to go be the person that actually cares, that learns their story, learns how they got to where they're at, learn about their adventure, and then they get to become part of mine. And that's fulfilling. That's the value that I didn't know existed when I got started. And that's the value that most of these people that are getting started don't know that they don't know. Like they just don't know it's real because they've never done it before.
Yeah, Christian, you said something that I think knocked it out of the park on the lines of what Cody was just talking about, and that's that you are telling your story, but what you're really getting them to do is tell their story back to you. And I thought that was just such a good piece of insight that you brought up. How long did it take you to realize that? Did you fumble through this? This is an exercise of learning how to listen and learning how to really be invested in these people's stories. And I'm sure you weren't just born with that knowledge.
There's a drill that Cody and I do, and this is how we move so fast, by the way. After every meeting, we'll do this after this podcast, but every meeting, every video we watch, every transaction we close, we take time to go, okay, what was your takeaway? And we talk about the takeaways. So very early on, like around our first transaction early on, we had already discussed, well, what made the first 30 units for Cody work? And we're trying to map out, how did you get as far as you did that fast? There's offers for some of those buildings that came in. They got offers for higher prices, and they called Cody and said, I just got an offer for this. I mentioned it to you at a lower price. So let's put it together, and I'm going to sell it to you. I've turned down stuff. I'm like, okay, there's something there. Beyond just like doing a deal in the numbers, people are turning down actual money to seller finance to, at the time, a 21-year-old. That's insane. And what it came down to is the relationship and the story is just worth more. So we mapped out what's called our circle drill. You start with relatability. So you find some relatable point. And in real estate, it's almost always about the real estate and how they got started or what your goals are.
Relatability is just your past.
Yep. Relatability is any piece of your story. It can be as little as I used to play sports as a kid and then I stopped. It could be as big as like I had a major life event or a health scare. Whatever it is, you know how to tell your story. So relatability gets you in the door. You communicate a clear goal, and you can do this in long form, but you really want to be able to do it in a few sentences. I am trying to do X. Cody's thing has been, I'm trying to retire my mother. For me, I'm trying to retire my wife.
Congratulations, you did it.
Yes, we got that done. School districts got weird, and she was a kindergarten teacher. So the goal is to get her out. And for me, one duplex at a time was not cutting it, because I was like, I spent all my money 7 years to buy 2 duplexes in the house. I'm like, I can't work another 7 years to buy 2 more duplexes and be halfway there. So there's my goal. Duplexes aren't cutting it. I want to retire my wife. Then there's the significance behind the goal, which is, she has all these dreams. This is what I want to do as a husband. You've done these things, whoever I'm talking to, and this is where you transition to them. Like, you have done what I'm trying to do. You've bought bigger real estate. You've accumulated what I'm trying to do to hit this target. How did you get there? And now what you're doing is you're just mapping the same circle for them. What do they relate to with you? What are their goals and what were their goals? And ultimately, if you can nail down the significance for them, Cody used an example recently in this podcast of they want to pass the real estate to their kids, but the kids want the money, not the real estate. Well, if that's their target and the significance is I'm worried about what I'm passing on to my family, like for them, they're like, we don't want to give them a wad of cash. We want to give them notes because they don't want real estate. We want to give them payments.
There's just an emotional disconnect between how much work actually went into building something like that. And most people, most of the kids or the family members don't comprehend how much work actually goes into doing this. And so they just want the money.
And at the end of it, when both circles line up, when you have 2 goals, 2 pieces of significance, we get a yes. Basically, every single time we offer anything, we get a yes. We don't do letters of intent, which people tell you need to write these and negotiate.
Wrong.
We know it's going to be accepted because we spend the time on these relationships so that by the time anyone brings up a transaction, we know it's going to be accepted because we've already talked about all this multiple times over. I know what they want. I know what interest rates they want. I know what they're expecting. And we give them an offer that just matches. This is exactly what you said you want. And it works for us. And this is why it works for us. It's that simple. That's creative finance.
Yes. It's the relationship. It's everything. It's everything. You guys are building relationships, and it's not just surface level. It's not transactional. Obviously, there's a goal, right? But both parties are meeting this goal, and you guys are mutually invested in this relationship because you care about each other. You're helping each other. You genuinely want to help each other. You're genuinely trying to accomplish something together, and it's more than just transactional. It becomes emotional to some degree. Mm-hmm. These people are leaving you their legacy, their baby that you get to steward and pass on and tell the next generation the story of how you stewarded this great gift that somebody, bestowed to you, and you took care of it and stewarded it well and grew it and nurtured it, and they have that legacy to leave to you. And that's the powerful thing. I love what you guys are saying. This is such an important message, and I hope people are listening and soaking this in, because this is the key. It's more than about the transaction. It's the relationship. So you guys hit your numbers. You said, you retired your wife, you retired your mom. The goalpost is moving. So how much money do you need to be happy?
Well, I still haven't finished all the stuff I want to help my mom with. Like, I'm trying to remodel her house into a duplex so she can rent it out, because it'll make $5,000 a month, $4,000 after expenses. And so I'm working on helping her remodel room by room. We're just going through and doing reno. So I'm working with a contractor named Luis. So we're going to start doing that this year, at least later this year or early next year, helping buy a condo waterfront in Point Ruston. And you're familiar with Point Ruston.
Oh, yeah.
So if she could live there for free and then have the rental income, that's where I see her being like completely done if she wants to. So we're not quite done on that one.
Okay, so here's a better question then. How are you two measuring success? Because I know right now it's not money. And the more people that you talk to and the more circles like this you get into, it's not about the money. It's not. And that's not how success is measured. Some people do, it's a scoreboard. But how do you guys measure success?
Well, when you're first starting, especially in the entrepreneurial space, there's a certain amount of like, okay, I need enough money to survive. And so the first thing is always like, okay, I need to own my time. That's for everyone. And we blew through that really quickly. It doesn't cost a lot of money. Some people really mess it up by like, I bought all my units and then I spent it all on a McLaren and now my car payments are equal to my
cash flow.
Yeah, you get in a lot of trouble. We have a really relatively low cost of living. And we don't really push that because I'm not interested in that. We love playing the real estate game. So success for us is just continuing to scale and learn the game. It plays just like a board game. Right off camera, I have a whole wall of board games. I love playing real estate. So success to us is, are we farther along this year than we were last year? And have we helped more people? Which is why I love that mentorship group. It's really fun. Caleb and Chuck are on our channel occasionally. They have their own little YouTube channel they launched. It's literally just called Caleb and Chuck. So easy to find. But it's really fun watching someone else while we're getting all the comments on YouTube. Well, this only works in your market. This only works in tertiary markets. This doesn't work out of state.
They're doing it out of state in multiple different markets of Texas.
At 19 years old, they have properties in Houston, McAllen, Laredo.
They've got 28 apartments.
Yeah, and they're door dashing. They literally no money, no experience, right out of high school. Absolutely nailing it. That's where I measure success. When you take a model and the model is scalable and it's proven again and again and again, it's just really fun to watch it grow.
And for myself, the way that I would illustrate success for folks is the quality of life bump that you get when you more effectively manage your obligations versus your options. For me getting started, I borrowed 12% money for my down payments. I had an obligation to knock those out or I lose my stuff. Now I have the option to borrow money conventionally because I built a good business. So the options that I have increased significantly, and thus the quality of life has gone way up. So in the beginning, everything was an obligation. Had to do this, had to do that, had to bring in enough money just to pay my hard money. I couldn't have vacancies. Now that a lot of that's gone, the equities are up, the cash flows are up. I have the option to do a lot of things. I have the option to borrow more money, and we're doing some of that. We're taking some stuff conventional. I have the option to develop. I also have the option to buy the McLaren. I'm not going to do it, but the quality of life has advanced so far because we've built the whole business around limiting the obligations we take on and enabling a lot of options through good business practice.
You're creating additional options for yourself every single day because you are wisely investing your time in very focused area to make sure that your obligations are fulfilled. Just like they say, if your house is not in order, everything else is going to be a mess. And so you're just very clear on your processes and where you focused that energy. I want to ask just a quick wrap-up question on the market, and then we'll close out on some fun stuff. And that is, as we look at the horizon line, it seems to me like a lot of syndicators who were maybe newer in the game, maybe got slightly over their skis, had some bridge debt coming due soon. It appears that there's a I don't know, a little bomb on the horizon in the multifamily space. And as you guys are looking out at the horizon line, the next 5 years for you, are you focusing on larger multis, or what's your temperature on singles? What do you think?
We have 4 business cycles. This is really fun because no matter what the market does, these don't change because we believe in long-term fixed rate cash flowing debt. You mentioned syndicators. I feel really bad for the people who didn't lock their debt.
Short-term variable rate.
This is slightly off topic and I'll get right to your question, but with the syndication, there's too many people who encouraged new investors to buy 100-unit buildings who did not understand how the cash flows and debt works. So their first deal ever is going to be like a 75-unit building, and it's going to cash flow a little bit with a game plan to make it better and better and better. And they do not have the money to weather the fact that their rates just went from 3% to 8%. And they're going to get out and they're going to hurt all their investors. And we're actually seeing a good deal of it. Now, if you have enough money to weather it, I do think the interest rate increase is not going to be a forever thing. It looks like we're actually kind of getting a hold on it. I'm expecting some good numbers later in the year. So if you can afford to hold, okay. But the name of the game is long-term fixed rate debt. So that plays into our 4 cycles. So you start by building your base. So you're going to buy cash flowing real estate, and you're going to get long enough debt where you can afford to hold it and get enough pieces on the board where you can afford to move the debt around and play your game.
Creative.
Yeah. So you start with that goal and you go, okay, how many pieces do I really need on the board to reach my goal? Now we're going to go and we're going to acquire those. That can be conventional, creative, seller finance, contract for deed, you name it. I don't care what your strategy is. Get the stuff.
That is what we call build phase.
Yep. Now we're going to go into stabilize. There's going to be some problems with some of the things you pick up. Like some of the seller finance stuff, the reason that they seller finance because it wasn't financeable through a bank because it was garbage.
Stabilization is all about getting consistency. That is it. Consistent income, consistent expenses, predictable cash flow.
Yep. It's doing the best you can with what you purchased without major CapEx, without all these crazy projects. It's just saying, okay, with the pieces we have, how much income can we get consistently every month? That's stabilized. High occupancy, close to market rate. Now, what we used to think you do is, okay, now you pay off all the debt and you're done forever.
That was wrong.
That is wrong because it will take you forever to pay off that debt. You don't have a big enough hammer to whack that debt.
So we optimize. This is stage number 3. So you build your portfolio, you stabilize it, get consistency, and then you optimize to maximum production. We get the maximum amount of income, the minimum amount of expenses. We want it to be completely stable, no more CapEx. We are getting everything to a level where this is great, maximum amount of output from all of our input.
Now, what that looks like for us in this cycle, we just fairly recently put on new roofs on a building that had not flat roofs but butterfly roofs. So the roofs go in like this in a place that gets a ton of snow. So it gets a big ice dam, water fills up, floods the apartments. That's just a design flaw. I'm going to assume the builder was from California and built that in Moses Lake. However, we go to a pitched roof. That is a much better product. That is a real capital expense. Those are expensive roofs back when the cost of wood was at like an all-time high as well.
6 figures on the roofs. We got it repainted.
But that absolutely changed the property. A property that he bought for $680 and I bought into later. We finished the project. It's worth $1.4 million. We were able to take some of that debt out and pay off some of the 12% debt. So we bring 12% debt down to like 5.5, which is phenomenal.
And now that we've optimized it, we can shift into debt hammer, where we take all the excess cash flows and we got the increased rent, we got the lower cost of capital because it's a better asset. Now we can take all the extra income and we can debt hammer. Now, per your question about looking into the future, the 5-year horizon, yeah, a lot of people are in trouble, and that's fine. We may buy some of it, we may not. But right now, we're in the optimization phase. We don't care about buying. We're buying a 12-plex. We're going to close it out in the next 30 days, looking at buying another 50 apartments and looking at buying a historic building in downtown. But outside of the random acquisitions that we're just doing because we can, the how do you buy it, how do you never lose it, the whole seller finance game, we are just optimizing everything. And as soon as it's optimized and all the projects are like that 12-plex where we just did the roof, we did the rent bumps, we did the paint, all that, then we pay everything off, and then we can go back into build phase. But we're not there yet, so we're not worried about it.
The fun thing is, you mentioned the economy. When the economy shifts, our expenses are fixed for the most part. I mean, you're going to, utilities or taxes can adjust a little bit, but within reason, we got debt that is fixed rate debt and long term. So when the economy goes down and we're optimizing, we just continue to make more money as we optimize things, and expenses stay relatively the same. So we don't really care too much about economic cycles because we made good decisions on acquisition to fix as many variables as humanly possible.
What is so successful about your guys' system is you guys know exactly the order to prioritize your work. I came from a special operations unit in the military, and priorities of work were pounded into our heads. We knew the order things had to get done, and they're prioritized in highest priority to lowest. And that's exactly what you guys are doing. You've identified what has the highest priority. You know which cycle you're in. You're not going to get distracted. You're not going to come back into the patrol base and start shaving if you haven't cleaned your weapon yet. You guys know you need to clean your weapon before you start shaving, and then you can go to sleep. I have 3 little questions to close out, and I already know the answer to the first one I'm going to ask you, and I think it's the most important one. Are you guys having fun?
That is one of the 3 criteria.
Yeah, we wouldn't be doing this if we were having fun, because we've surpassed the amount that we need to build.
We could be done.
Yeah, we could be done. And if we really didn't want pain, we wouldn't have bought the resort, because it is so hard to run a resort. It's not our model, right? We went multifamily to hospitality.
But there's enough 22-year-olds, 23-year-old now, that have the McLaren and have the house.
Yep.
Instead, we chose the adventure.
Yeah, you're making a story. All right, last 2 questions. What's the best way to invest in yourself?
Buy real estate.
The best way to invest in yourself, I would say, is to be around the people who you want to be like. To find the right mentor for you is the person who's done what you want to do. So we love to mentor people on the how to do it, like the big scale, like here's the strategy. But there is no one who is more qualified to mentor you to do what you want to do than the person who's already done it. So the guy in your market, if you're trying to get to 100 units, the guy in your market who owns 150 units is the guy who's going to be the best person to get you towards your goal, or gal. So find the people who can get you to the next level. And then just remember, however you got to that level is not how you're going to get to the next level. So you set new goals and you find new people, but it's just being around the people who've done the things. It's that simple.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Real quick, before we get out of here, where can people find you?
Cody and Christian Multifamily Strategy on YouTube would be the go-to. It's growing little by little every day. We're also on Instagram at Doing Cody Things, because I am, in fact, always doing Cody Things. And Christian's lucky enough to get his actual name, so at Christian Osgood.
At Christian Osgood is actually unique. Cody Davis, who apparently plays for the New England Patriots.
He's more famous than I am for now.
Follow our YouTube channel and we'll change that. And then if anyone wants to learn how we did what we did, we really mapped out the journey from 0 to 100 units. We mapped that all out on an online course to streamline everything, themultifamilystrategy.com.
Listen, guys, thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure. Man, I really enjoyed your story prior to having you, and having you guys on here. Fell in love with you guys. It's been an honor to sit and have this conversation. So thanks for stopping by, and everybody listening, thanks for listening, and we will catch you guys next week.